Pardon me? The White House now facing blowback on camera for the first time since President Biden pardoned his son, plus 2 senators taking the over. Why they now want an investigation into DraftKings and FanDuel. And got raw milk? The new guidance from the government ahead of Donald Trump's return. That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
This was not easy for the president. It wasn't. Because you all mentioned the statements that we have made over the summer.
So if you're a parent, you know this. We teach our kids to tell the truth. And today, the White House trying to convince millions that the President of the United States did just that when it came to one of his own. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. The White House on the defense as J.D. Vance is on the road in battered Western North Carolina. We will take you to both here on The Hill in a moment. But first tonight from The Hill, a live look on this Friday evening at America's largest city, site of a manhunt that has now entered its 60th hour. New clues opening up new questions in the search for the gunman who murdered Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, including whether the suspect is still in the Big Apple. Our Laura Ingle starts us off tonight. She's live in Manhattan with the very latest as we know it this evening. Laura?
Hey, Blake, we are outside of the Port Authority bus terminal in Midtown Manhattan, and now that the NYPD has come out and said they do believe that he is no longer here in the city, the suspect they believe is gone. We're also learning that they believe that he also left on a bus, not from this terminal, but from another Port Authority terminal, which is at the George Washington Bridge. It's more of a bus station, but that is brand new information tonight. So with the manhunt still underway, it's now expanded, and we've been told that it is now including Atlanta, Georgia, because the Atlanta PD is now telling NewsNation through an email that they are now working with the NYPD. Why does that matter? It matters because we had heard that this suspect had possibly come from Atlanta, Georgia, 10 days prior to the shooting that happened on Wednesday morning. So it's all starting to sound like it's tying together. Whether or not they have a suspect in mind, an ID, they have not revealed it to the media. We are still waiting for that. We also can confirm that the NYPD has been seen in multiple hours throughout the day searching Central Park. We're waiting for details to find out what, if anything, they found there. Blake?
Our Laura Ingle live for us in New York City tonight as the questions continue to mount. Laura, thank you.
He laid out his thought process. He talked about the underlying facts of the case. I, don't have anything else beyond what the president laid out his thinking in his written statement.
Seemingly no regret, or at least not admitting any. Back here in Washington, 5 days after the White House announced President Biden would no longer keep his word and pardon his son Hunter Biden, the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, faced a packed White House briefing room earlier today. Now, remember here, the reversal came from the president's Sunday evening in the form of a statement, and just hours later, he was on a plane headed to Africa. Now the president is back home and still hasn't answered questions directly about his own decision. He left that again to his White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, who for months was forced to echo what the president said.
He wrestled with this. It was not an easy thing for him to decide. Obviously, he wrestled with this, so no apology needed from him to me.
Joining me now, Alex Gangitano, White House reporter for TheHill.com. She was inside the briefing room today. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for TheHill.com. Chris Stirewalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Hello to you all. What a crew to hang out with on a Friday evening.
You're so lucky.
I am so lucky to be here with you. Let's start with Julia, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We were waiting for this. because the president made the decision, got on the plane, see ya, no questions, none of it, and then today threw it right back to Karine Jean-Pierre.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously so many questions as to when he's going to obviously face this publicly head on. Look, it seems as if there is a bit of a dodge here, that he's not, facing it publicly, and it's something he's going to be asked about numerous times. This could be a major part of his legacy. Remember
you think so?
that? I think so. I don't think it's going to be the major part, but when people are asked about the Biden administration, this is certainly going to come up.
Julia, Alex, you were inside the room earlier today at the briefing room. I've been in these situations. You know them. Everybody knows what's coming. Everybody's trying to get the question in, right? And Karine Jean-Pierre, I don't know what she's supposed to do, because the president tells you one thing and that's your job to repeat it. But it didn't seem like she had much today.
Keep in mind, this felt like deja vu. She had just been in the same position when the White House back in June and July was telling us he's not dropping out of the 2024 presidential race. And then he dropped out, and she was in the same position trying to explain what happened with the change of mind and if they misled the American people. Now we're in the same situation. We heard from her on Air Force One earlier this week, try to talk about how he wrestled with this decision. He made it over the Thanksgiving weekend with his family. That was a lot of what she repeated in the briefing room today, but there was a lot of pressure on her to explain to the American people why they should trust something coming out of the White House after this change, and also why they should feel like the president's son deserves a pardon when, maybe their own family member doesn't get that kind of a luxury. So a lot of questions faced at her.
And that's part of the issue, Chris, right? The videos were cheap fakes until they weren't, and we saw the debate. He wasn't dropping out until he did. He wasn't pardoning Hunter until he did. I didn't just lay out 4 years. I just laid out 5 months.
Well, I'm afraid to say that the American people may not have a great deal of confidence that politicians are going to tell them the truth. And the job of the White House briefer is to take abuse, right? Is to stand in between the president and the press and not make news and not say anything. I think for Joe Biden, his legacy is very, very, it's broken at this point. Whatever he was going to be, he had a chance to be a caretaker president. He had a chance to be, as he said, a bridge to a transition to new leadership, a transition to something else. We don't know what he'll do with the remaining days of his presidency, with the month that he has left. He could do something to change that. He could pardon Donald Trump, for example, which I think would be a good idea, probably, for the charges that Donald Trump has already faced. But he has reneged on the central promises of his presidential candidacy. Number one, to be a bridge to the future. He failed to do that by running again. And number two, to have faith and confidence in the system and that things were going to work and things were going to be okay, gosh darn it. And what he's leaving office saying is, everybody get what you can while you can, and that's not a good look.
One of the things that stood out to me this week in all of this was the First Lady had a holiday event at the White House, I believe on Monday, and she had questions lobbed to her about Hunter Biden. Joe Biden took off out of town and essentially left it to his wife to answer. And then to start off the week, and then on Friday left it up to the press secretary to answer. He's basically saying, you guys deal with this.
Well, it was striking watching that image or that footage of her with children. They're doing, a Christmas event. It's supposed to be a lighthearted event. And she's being asked something very, very personal, I might add, about her son. And she answered in a very personal manner. Quite a image coming out of the White House with the First Lady. We haven't really heard much from him, obviously, on this issue, but he's going to get asked.
Yeah. Hey, Alex, do we know when we're going to hear from Joe Biden next?
Oh, that's a good question. Yesterday he was at the tree lighting, didn't talk to the media, before or after. Sometimes, as you know, Blake, we see him when he's said going out somewhere, out of the White House, the media can catch him in a scrum or quickly grab him before he's getting on the helicopter or whatever else on the South Lawn. We haven't had a situation like that. So that is a good question. We know actually next Tuesday he's going to be giving a speech on the economy. Maybe he'll he'll be able to take a few questions after. But with this president, he doesn't always do that, again, as you know. But we could be able to get him in a transitional situation. Maybe Tuesday's the time for him to say something about this family situation.
Next Tuesday and a couple maybes. We'll leave it there. Alex Gangitano at the White House. Alex, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so far from the briefing room and well outside the Beltway, the vice president-elect, J.D. Vance, spent the day in western North Carolina touring the damage still left over from Hurricane Helene back in September. Now, while there, he met with the family of a firefighter killed in the rescue effort.
And I know that a lot of people in this neck of the woods feel left behind and forgotten. Certainly when this administration changes hands in the next 45 days, we're going to do everything that we can to help people rebuild, to get them back on their feet.
That monster storm caused about $53 billion of damage in North Carolina alone, several other states across the Southeast as well. More than 100 North Carolina residents died in the storm, over 120,000 homes, at least 6,000 miles of road, and over 160 sewer and water systems damaged as well. The visit brings up the question, how has Congress still not approved additional funding to help those battered by Hurricanes Helene and Milton? Is there an answer here? There is or isn't an answer, but really there isn't an answer here, Julie, that they haven't taken care of.
Not at the moment. There seemed to be some sort of what we thought was a deal, but then we saw that the Freedom Caucus said they weren't going to agree to it. We know that they're still in negotiations talking about that top line. We've seen Republicans and Democrats say, look, we want to reach a bipartisan solution. It would appear that whatever package is agreed to would be attached to some sort of stopgap measure used to fund the government, towards the end of the year. So we'll see if they can make that happen.
That's a lot of Washington that you just laid out. I've said this, Chris, if those storms hit New York, where the Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are, God forbid they hit Delaware, Joe Biden, Louisiana, where Mike Johnson is, I don't think we'd be sitting here in early December without funding coming this way.
Maybe not. I do think that Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk should take good note of this.
Why so?
So the Freedom Caucus wants to stop spending money that the government doesn't have. They want to stop borrowing or printing money to pay for things that the government can't afford. And they want fiscal limitation on the largesse to be provided to this swing state. Okay, well, guess what? It's not popular. It's not popular. Americans like free money. They like free stuff. They like for the government to work. They want a government that's responsive. When you start talking about cuts, when you start talking about fiscal austerity, when you start talking about cutting trillions of dollars out of the government, that's great if you're a Freedom Caucus conservative and you're from a very red district. It's not as good if you're from a swing district where people want results.
Here's the thing, though. You know this as a Floridian. I know that. I mean, I remember as a kid lying on the floor the night of Hurricane Andrew, right?
You guys are very expensive.
And I think
you guys are very expensive.
If you've ever lived through a storm and you know what it is and the devastation, that's not popular either. And it's just unfathomable to me that here we are in early December, and it's like, best of luck.
Not to defend the non-spenders, but these people have gotten a lot of results, right? They have a lot of aid has flowed there, and it's not like nothing.
I shouldn't say best of luck, but right. Clearly we need to the coffers on some of these agencies need to be filled for the next time and continued help.
And there will be a crisis after that, and a crisis after that, and a crisis after that. And my point in all of this is, reinventing government is attractive. It sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Cutting $1 trillion in spending sounds like a good idea. But whose trillion? Whose storm? Whose district? That's where you get down to it, and the rubber meets the road.
See you both later in the show. Appreciate it. Julia Manchester, Chris Steyerwalt, thank you. Still to come, a major announcement in the Daniel Penny case. Jesse Weber here to join us on the Hill to explain what happened inside the courtroom and with the jury today. Plus, the USDA now requiring milk be tested for the bird flu virus. A decision made for public health? Yeah, sure, possibly. Or knowing that RFK Jr. could be coming in around the corner. And Chris Steyerwalt.
Ooh.
I said you were going to go.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah, you're coming back. Steyerwalt's coming back here on some of what we learned in just the last few weeks. I'm Blake Berman. The Hill returns in 4. Welcome to Washington. This is the center of politics. We're back in a few. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So got raw milk? You just might, as it's believed roughly 11 million people drink non-pasteurized milk. It's come into the spotlight recently due to its growing popularity and a finding from health officials in California that detected bird flu in raw milk. Now, today, perhaps a response. The U.S. Department of Agriculture announced a new federal order, which requires raw milk samples to be collected and shared for testing. But it also comes as President-elect Trump assembles his upcoming team, which includes Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's also a longtime supporter and consumer of raw milk. He, as you know, has been nominated to head up the Department of Health and Human Services. Joining me now is Sid Miller. He is the Ag Commissioner in the state of Texas from behind the wheel. Hello, sir. Hope you're in park. It looks like you are. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Okay, great. You are an advocate of raw milk, and as is known in your state. And I'm sitting here, Sid, and I obviously see the announcement, and I know what's going on with bird flu, and that's reasonable to be worried, concerned, and want to track it down. But I'm also looking at it, and I'm wondering, is the Ag Department trying to front run potentially RFK Jr. coming in? Where are you?
Well, bird flu, we need to take it seriously. And every tanker load of milk that leaves the dairy is tested for high bacteria count. Whether it be, Listeria, Salmonella, E. coli. The state should be doing this, not the federal government. We don't need the, federal inspectors walking up onto a dairyman's place. They don't know anything about what we do.
So this idea of a national milk testing strategy, which got rolled out today, you don't think we need that?
We can do it. It's not easy. But the states can do it. The federal government doesn't need to be doing it. We test every load of milk that leaves the dairy now. We can just add one more test. It's not that big a deal. Where we have to be careful is in raw milk because it's not pasteurized. If the milk's pasteurized, it kills the bird flu virus. It's not an issue. Where the issue is, it's in raw milk. So we have to be very careful with that. If you're drinking raw milk now and there's an outbreak of bird flu in your community or your state, you may want to just back off of that for a little bit until we get this under control.
And as I mentioned, you're a consumer, you're an advocate. Here's what Tom Vilsack, the head of the Department of Agriculture, said today. He said, quote, among many outcomes, speaking of the mandate, this will give farmers and farm workers better confidence in the safety of their animals and ability to protect themselves, and it will put us on a path to quickly controlling and stopping the virus's spread nationwide. Are you with him there?
Well, it will do that. I just think it's a government overkill. We don't need federal inspectors coming on dairies. We're doing it already, testing the milk. No load of milk leaves without being tested for high counts of bacteria. If it's too high, the milk has to be dumped. Pasteurizing, if you're drinking pasteurized milk, it's absolutely safe, even if it has a bird flu virus in it. Pasteurization kills all pathogens, kills all the bacteria, even the bird flu virus. So you're very, very safe drinking pasteurized milk. The issue is the raw milk because it hasn't had any pathogens killed in it. So I'm going to caution people, be very, very careful. If there's an outbreak of bird flu in your state, make sure that dairy has been tested and that it's absolutely proven that it does not have bird flu in the milk.
I'm looking at the rise in raw milk sales, 21% increase since March. That's a really big jump. 65% increase over the past year. As I mentioned, roughly about 4% or so of the U.S. population is a consumer. There might be some folks out there that are leery of RFK Jr., that are leery of raw milk, know that he's an advocate. I know you're an advocate. What would you say to folks who might be concerned about what the next administration may or may not do with this?
If you're going to be concerned, what I am, I'm for freedom. Give the American consumer the choice, the information to make an educated decision and let them decide. Let them decide whether they want to drink raw milk. Let them decide whether they want to take the vaccine or not. But it's all about freedom. You should be able to drink raw milk if that's your choice. But you should be informed about it because it is dangerous if it's not handled correctly.
Sid Miller, he is the Ag Commissioner in Texas. Seatbelt on and car and drive. We got to leave you from here. Thank you, sir. Have a great weekend. Appreciate you.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Still much more. Merry Christmas as well. Still much more ahead here on the Hill. After a deadlocked jury in the Daniel Penny trial, the judge dismisses the top manslaughter charge. Jesse Weber joining us live on the other side of the break. The Daniel Penny case. What happened today? and where this goes next. Stay with us. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Live look there, as you can see, is the Big Apple, where there is several headlines going on in New York City tonight as the New York Police Department continues its manhunt for the person who shot and killed Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. That search now into its 60th hour this evening. And then this major story as well. After a deadlocked jury, the judge in the subway chokehold case dismissed the top manslaughter charge against Daniel Penny, the former Marine who was accused of second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide in the death of Jordan Neely, a distressed black subway rider back in May 2023. NewsNation's legal contributor Jesse Weber joins me live. Jesse, hello. We were on sort of verdict watch today. Explain sort of the complications that the jury had and the decision that the judge made as a result.
Okay, so the jury was hung as to the top charge, manslaughter. Now, typically when that happens, what did the judge say to the jury? You have to be unanimous about that charge. Once you decide that he's not guilty of that, then you can move over and decide the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide. What happened today was the jury said we're hung multiple times, and instead of just dismissing the entire trial, saying this is a mistrial, the judge went back and agreed with the prosecutors to allow them to completely throw out the manslaughter charge, just dismiss it, act as if it didn't happen, and now on Monday, the jury gets to decide whether or not he's guilty of criminally negligent homicide.
Is that?
No,
I mean,
that doesn't happen. Okay, let me explain. There's ways you can charge this as an alternative, as a lesser included. What you can't do, and what I haven't seen, these are your jury instructions, and then to change the jury instructions in the middle of deliberations, the defense objected to this. And let me tell you, if he is convicted on Monday or on Tuesday, I think they have a really strong appellate issue to have that conviction overturned. Now, I will tell you this much. If they are deadlocked with respect to manslaughter is very similar to criminally negligent homicide. Whatever issues are holding them up right now might hold them up on Monday, and they might be hung as to that second charge, and that will be the case.
So I've never stepped a foot in law school for a single day, Jesse. But as I'm listening to you and as you outline this, I'm just thinking to myself, if he is convicted, it seems like this is just sort of just sets up the defense to object and to take it to the next appellate level.
You know, the judge today didn't even know the law if he could do this. That doesn't sound great, does it? Right? Can I even do that? The judge had to ask the prosecutors, does the law even support you guys doing this, dismissing this top charge? What do I instruct the jury? Do I tell them that he's acquitted of this charge? Do I tell them it's dismissed? The fact that they had to go back to the case law to figure this out is really not a strength for the prosecution. I will tell you this much. What it does seem like is the prosecution just wants to convict Daniel Penny any which way, in the sense that if they really believe that he is guilty of manslaughter, then they accept that this jury was hung and they retry him. No, they just said we're going to dismiss it. We'll never try him again for manslaughter. Now we'll just try to get him for criminally negligent homicide. It doesn't look right, and I don't know if it's supported by the law, to be honest with you.
Wow, lots of questions, and obviously a big day on Monday as well. Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yep, good seeing you.
You as well. All right. Down the home stretch of the presidential election, he had no problem getting into the political fray, mocking at some points the person he didn't want to win the White House, even kind of making it personal. But a different tone last night for former President Barack Obama, who called political divisiveness one of the greatest challenges of our time.
With each party more and more uniform in its beliefs, less tolerant of dissenting views, media companies have figured out that there's a profit in playing to the extremes.
But not here on NewsNation, as you know, where we talk to the left and the right, hear from all sides and all voices. The former president now touting what he calls pluralism, which he describes as living alongside individuals and groups who are different than us. Joining me now is the Democratic Congresswoman from the state of California, Sydney Comliger-Dove. Congresswoman, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it. On a Friday night and coming in and being with us. Here's what I noticed from former President Obama. On the trail down the home stretch in October and November, he had no problem going after Donald Trump, talking about diapers, laughing him, mocking him. A lot different tone last night from the former president. So Why should we listen to him on coming together when I just witnessed what I witnessed in October and November?
Because campaign trails are campaign trails. The election is over. We now have a new president-elect, and what he's saying is absolutely correct. You know, he said, you don't always have to have kumbaya, but you have to find ways to compromise. I know many folks have families, you know, that don't all see eye to eye, even in your own home, in your own school, in your workplace. Look where I am in Congress. And you still have to find ways to compromise. And that's what he is saying.
Is he the best messenger for the Democratic Party right now? Because here's David Axelrod, who you know was senior advisor to Barack Obama for a very long time. He said, I think he'd be the first to agree. I think he would say that he's run his race and we need others to step up. And so there's a real question of, we saw it with George W. Bush for Republicans, Bill Clinton for Democrats, presidents who've said, I've had my time, let's move on. Is it time for Barack Obama to say, I've had my time, let's move on?
Well, as a Chicagoan, I'm always going to say I'm here for Barack Obama, but we are also seeing an evolution of leadership in both the Republican and the Democratic Party. So it is big enough for a number of folks. We have young leaders in Congress and also across the country who are speaking up, who young people are listening to. I think the tent is big enough for all voices that resonate with voters.
What should he do, though?
He should continue to do what he is doing, right? He has this Obama Foundation where I think he's trying to develop new leaders. I support him doing that. There's a place for him as a former president and as someone that a lot of folks in other generations listen to. So I'm not saying kick him to the curb. We don't do that to our elders. But I think he's also trying to make space for young folks. And he's saying, young people, we need you in this discussion as well, right? We need debate, we need dissent, and we need to find ways to have compromise with dissenting opinions.
So on dissenting opinions, debate, we need you in the discussion. I spoke to a couple of your colleagues on this show this week. Greg Landsman, Democrat from Ohio. Jake Auchincloss was here the other night, Democrat from Massachusetts. And I asked them about DOGE because your colleague, Jared Moskowitz, Democrat from Florida, said, I want in. And here's what both of them told me, and I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Why wouldn't you want to be in the room? Why wouldn't you want to be working together? And so there are opportunities where I think both parties would say, yeah, that's abuse, or that's a waste of money, or that's duplication.
As a member of Congress, I can't represent my district's values or advance its priorities unless I'm at the table.
You want in on DOGE?
No. I think it's a fake position for fake people who are trying to cut programs that the American people need. I am certainly not interested in grandmothers across the country dying because DOGE is trying to cut their access to Social Security and Medicare.
They're not going after Social Security.
Well, what they're saying is they want to cut at least $2 trillion, and Congress has appropriation, the purse, for about $1.7 trillion. So what else they want to cut is going to have to come from mandatory programs that are keeping people alive. I do support looking at waste and fraud and abuse. Absolutely. How we can make government work better. Absolutely. And in fact, Jess was elected whip of the Congressional Black Caucus, 58 members, 62 in total. And so we're going to have to be at the table when we are negotiating with Republicans because their margin is so thin. So we do want to be at the table. We do want to make government work for everyone.
Just not the DOGE table.
Well, we want to be realistic.
Okay.
We want to be realistic. That's not a real agency or department. They can certainly make suggestions. It's curious to me that Elon Musk has benefited, to over $6 billion of taxpayer dollars so that he can have his hobby of trying to get more investors to, invest in the things that he's trying to do. But at the end of the day, Congress has to make sure that the American people are alive and healthy and employed and well.
Just to be clear, is that your personal position, or are speaking on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus?
No, that's my personal position.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Congresswoman Sidney Conlon-Durdell. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, all right, thank you so much. Thanks for being with us here on The Hill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, well, this week, our partners at Decision Desk HQ called the final House race of the 2024 election. Republicans will have 220 seats, Democrats 215. As we dig into the races, we wanted to know who outperformed the top of the ticket in their race, and no one better to break it all down than my man, Chris Steyerwalt.
When I walk from here to there, they don't let me talk. They have more confidence, obviously, in you as a broadcaster.
Just don't make me chew gum as well.
Okay, all right. Well, this is by Blake Berman, the best in the business. Okay, you want to do it? Let's do it. Okay, so we know that Democrats had a lousy year. But they did pick up 2 seats in the House, net, and shrank the Republican majority. This is, by the way, the most narrow House majority in the history of the House of Representatives.
Wow.
This is the tightest that it's ever been. But I wondered, hey, who did best? Who are the folks who did best in a bad year for Democrats? You see these folks right here. These are all Democrats who won in districts that Kamala Harris lost. I think that's right, but they all overperformed Kamala Harris substantially.
Right.
Blake Berman, what do they have in common?
I see Democrats. I know moderate.
So those are the success stories. I mean, look at that. Pat Ryan's district, which is suburban New York, he outperformed Kamala Harris in a district that she won decisively, 2.5 points, and he won it by 13.
Right.
There's something to be learned there. So why don't we look at the Republicans? Look and see here. You're going to see it. It's going to be great. These are the folks that outperformed Donald Trump in their districts. Now, we only looked at competitive districts. We didn't look at all 435 districts.
Right.
Just looking at the places where majorities are made, where presidential elections are won. What do you see here? What do they have in common?
Those two in the middle do the show a lot?
Yes, we do. Yes, we appreciate their participation. Yeah. But they're all moderates, right? Brian Fitzpatrick, who did the best of anybody, he won in a district. He won handily in a Pennsylvania district that Kamala Harris won by, just a whisker. But they all have in common that they're moderate.
Okay.
So here's your takeaway, America, other than the fact that all of the 8 people that you've seen today are going to have about $1 quadrillion spent against them.
Yes. Good luck in 26, right?
In the coming midterm elections. But it's this. Voters keep saying the same thing to Washington. They say, we'd like you to be good at your job. We'd like you to compromise. We'd like you to be a reasonable human being. But instead, the major parties keep offering them a toggle back and forth between one radical vision and another radical vision because both of the parties have been substantially captured by the most radical voices in them. What do voters want? They want normal. They just are crazy about normal if you give it to them.
What a concept. Steyerwalt breaks it down. All right. Don't go anywhere, by the way. Still come here on the Hill. The billionaires around Donald Trump ready to descend on Washington next year. Did you happen to see what Jeff Bezos said this week? I watched the whole hour of his interview. It was fascinating, and one thing stood out to me. Plus, 2 senators are requesting an investigation into gambling. Why is that? Full panel, other side of the break.
We're not going to be able to stop the flood that is about to come.
How a program meant to help America's farmers may now threaten our food chain and our farmers' livelihoods. Growing Broke, tomorrow at 9/8 Central, only on NewsNation.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So would you take the over or under here? Tonight, 2 senators are calling on the Federal Trade Commission to take on the country's biggest players in online sports betting. The Republican Senator Mike Lee, the Democratic Senator Peter Welch accused FanDuel and DraftKings of violating antitrust laws after their attempt to merge was blocked. In a letter to the Federal Trade Commission chair and the Assistant Attorney General, Lee and Welch write, quote, after their merger to Monopoly was blocked, it seems that FanDuel and DraftKings arguably have acted as one company violating our antitrust laws. Now, FanDuel and DraftKings each make up more than 30% of the market share of online sports betting in the U.S. together. You see there, they make up a little north of 60% of the market. Now, according to Statista, online sports betting alone is expected to reach $14.3 billion this year. And by 2029, that market revenue expected to grow even higher than that. A look here at where online sports betting is legal in the United States. It's not everywhere, as you know, but it's starting to get there state by state. More green on that map, you see, than red. Only 12 states in which you can't do it. Full panel here with me now. Lance Trover, former spokesperson for Doug Burgum's presidential campaign. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for TheHill.com. Chris Steyerwalt, host of The Hill Sunday, as you know, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Brad Howard, Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you in on a Friday. We get a little bit of news on sports betting. I just found this interesting because there's 45 days left until the new administration, and you got 2 senators today saying, look into this. What's going on here?
Well, I think, first of all, one of those states I was pointing out is Utah, where it's gambling is illegal.
Right.
And the Mormon faith doesn't support gambling in any form. So Mike Lee certainly has got some political motivations there. But there is more broadly, a growing sense of populism within the Republican Party. You're starting to see Republicans, like the Chamber of Commerce crowd is kind of beside themselves because you're starting to see folks go after these monopolistic tendencies. What'll be interesting to watch is Trump's actions around FTC appointments and what they do in the first 90 days, because so far he's only gone after big tech monopolies because of the censorship issue. It'll be interesting to see if he goes after others.
What's going on?
Yeah, I thought Mike Lee may have lost a big bet on the Jazz or something, and I thought it's illegal in Utah. He can't be doing that. Yeah, look, and I also think maybe he should try it under this Justice Department because they're way more likely to go after antitrust. DraftKings FanDuel, though, probably driven by young men, and so I'm not sure a Trump Justice Department is going to be after something like that.
Look, I think it's so interesting that you see a Republican and Democrat coming to this. And I think Brad makes a very interesting point about that economic populism. You know, I've been talking to Democrats and covering the DNC chair race this week, and one theme I hear is Democrats need to lean more into economic populism. We have to use that more. And like Brad says, this is an example of that, and maybe you see that, coming together here.
This is how you know Julia's so good. She was able to tie it back to the DNC.
Pivoted right out. Right out. She took the outlet pass. The rapid, widespread legalization of sports gambling on mobile telephones has swung like a wrecking ball through the young men of the United States. Gambling addiction is out of control and roaring. It's a roaring fire burning through billions of dollars, costing families, doing all this stuff. I think what we are going to see, and this could not agree more.
You were nodding with Brad the whole time.
That's three people that's agreed with me.
Not bad for an Arkansan, but totally right about the antitrust considerations and populism. But I will say this: the cultural backlash. There's a great piece in the Atlantic this week about the consequences of this. The cultural backlash against institutions, the PGA, the NFL, the MLB, and all of these places that wouldn't do it for liquor. They wouldn't do it for legal marijuana, but they do it for online gambling. I think the pendulum is going to swing back on this stuff.
Meantime, President-elect Trump assembling a high-profile and wealthy team, the richest man on earth, Elon Musk, and now Jeff Bezos, the second wealthiest person on earth, saying this week about the incoming president.
Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him.
All right, remember Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, which declined to endorse a candidate this year. But Bezos isn't the only high-profile billionaire looking to be involved in Trump's second term. Mark Zuckerberg reportedly seeking a, quote, active role in Trump's next term, according to Meta's president of global affairs. So what's going on here? Is it that they see Elon Musk was up there dancing next to Trump, is going to have a major role, and folks like that say, I need in?
Yeah, I think they're seeing their competitors have an ear of the president, and he's listening, and the president's governing philosophy and actions tend to be, well, whoever's lasted his ear at the moment tends to be where he lands. So we'll watch this, but I do think, number one, Trump enjoys having these billionaires grovel to him. I think there's that. But number two, I do think, and again, wouldn't use the term optimistic, but I do think there is some hope that Trump is shaking up the system. And I found when I was a Democratic chief of staff entering in 2017 with full control of government, there was a lot of unlikely bedfellows that you didn't expect because the ideology was kind of out the window. And so you could build transactional relationships to push an agenda through. There's an opportunity for a lot of Democrats. And when you look at the antitrust thing, they're letting the Republicans come to them. When you look at the cuts to the Pentagon spending under Doge, they're letting the Republicans come to them, which they seem to be cooperating with. So there's going to be an interesting next 4 years, I think, of interesting bedfellows.
I do wonder if there is some risk to it. Look, these are all billionaires, millionaires, and we've seen, like we chatted about earlier on the show this week, Bernie Sanders coming together with Elon Musk and some of the Doge initiatives, et cetera. But to bring it back to that point about economic populism, you got to wonder. I've chatted with some Democrats who have looked at this and said, we could attack Trump on this. This could seem as out of touch surrounding himself with these people. We'll see if that attack sticks, but we'll see.
You take Bezos at his word there?
Yeah, look, these guys are outside-the-box thinkers. They are innovators. They are disruptors. And I would say most of the Trump voters are like, heck yeah, that's what we want in Washington. We need disruption. So I think a lot of voters out there are okay.
But let's be clear, they would not be doing this if they didn't see some positive, if they wouldn't think they're going to get some positive results out of this. So what those positive results are, don't know yet. And keep in mind, too, I think when you develop relationships with Trump, you run the risk of turning things personal. And that's when things go downhill with Trump.
Do you want the last word on this or the best Sunday show in the business?
I don't know whether
both.
I don't know whether we'll talk about this issue, but I can tell you this: the threat that is coming for Bezos, the threat that's coming for Zuckerberg, the menace that is looming over them with the Trump Federal Trade Commission, with the Trump Justice Department. We know the animosity toward Google, towards these other places. Yep. And with Musk on the inside, Musk's competitors are thinking, oh, Lord, I cannot be out here with my top competitor inside the federal government.
The Bezos interview, one of the things that Jeff Bezos acknowledged in that interview, it's fascinating, for an hour long, was that he is before the United States government, him, his team, or his companies every single day, basically, of the year. What you got coming up on the Sunday show?
Well, we got Byron Donalds, Republican from Florida.
Very cool.
Yeah, and we have his Democratic counterpart, whose name is now on the screen, is Jake Auchincloss. And they will both be on. We're going to talk about this, that, the other thing. Best in the business panel of journalists. It's going to be fantastic.
10 a.m. Eastern, right here on News Nation, The Hill Sunday. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Still to come, the Naval Academy saying they will not get rid of diversity admissions. So what's going on here? Leland Vitter, host of On Balance, joins me on the other side of the break. Welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. A federal judge ruling today to uphold race-conscious admissions at the United States Naval Academy. It comes as several other private universities are rolling back DEI initiatives. Host of On Balance, Leland Vitter, joins me now. Leland, hello, happy Friday, good evening. Basically, the judge here said, you know what, it's the president and the president's administration gets to make moves on the military, so you got to think that this could potentially be short-lived, especially given if Pete Hegseth gets in and sort of what he has said as it relates to the military going forward.
No question about it. Remember, there was a carve-out in the original Supreme Court decision about this for the academies because they have a different mission, on and on and on. And the argument that had been made by the government and by the military, I think you're very right to point out that whatever the policy is as it relates to, quote-unquote, DEI,